Are we ready? Okay. Welcome to the Planning Commission for the City of Pacifica for Monday, April 4th, 2016. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Gordon.
Here.
Commissioner Campbell.
Here.
Commissioner Evans.
Present.
Commissioner Cooper.
Here.
Commissioners Niblin, Vaterlaus, and Gordon are absent.
Brown.
Pardon me. Cooper.
Brown.
Let's start over. Yeah. So Commissioners Vaterlaus and Niblin are absent, and one position's vacant. My apologies.
Thank you. Let's have a salute to the flag. Commissioner Gordon, would you mind leading it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. On to administrative business. Let's see, approval of the order of agenda. Commissioner Gordon.
I will move that we approve the order of agenda.
Okay, Commissioner Evans.
I'll second that.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. Please vote. All right, that passes. Next on approval of the minutes. I don't think we have any. Okay, no minutes. Designation of a liaison to the next city council meeting.
None needed.
All right. Oral communications is the next on the agenda. This portion of the agenda is available to the public to address the Planning Commission on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission that is not on tonight's agenda. The time allowed for any speaker will be 3 minutes. If you have something to tell us about that's not on the agenda tonight, you can fill out one of these cards, and you have 3 minutes. I have one card, and that is Tom Clifford.
Good evening, Commission staff. I'm here tonight to talk about the problem with in-law apartments and or second units on the property. Right now, we're not in accordance with the state's ordinance on how to do that, and I understand that we're supposed to get within compliance within this next year, and I'm hoping that that will be happening soon. Right now, there's a rub around the parking. The state allows for tandem parking, and the city of Pacifica doesn't, and that would make a big change, great deal for the people having an in-law within their own home. And second, along those lines, I also wanted to talk about second units on the property for the property owners that own a property that has a steep downhill slant. Currently, with the height restrictions and stuff, for those buildings, most of them can't be built on because of the steepness of their downhill lot. Based on city ordinances, height ordinances, and I am suggesting that that be changed from lowest to highest for these types of units to highest to highest. Highest land spot to highest point on the roof. That way, those people would also have the use of their property like people who have either level lots or have lots that are going uphill, and they can just cut into them. Right now, it's really unfair for the people that have steep downhill lots. They either can't build or have to go through so many hoops that they'd have to come to the Planning Commission to get an okay to do it, and would be asking for a variance, which is often very hard to get and relatively costly to come to the Planning Commission for that. So I would like the staff and Planning Commission to think about bringing things back in line with, bringing things in line with what's the state says that needs to happen, and getting that on the Planning Commission's agenda and moving that forward. It would help the homeless problem here in town, and also give some seniors extra income if they could have an in-law in their house. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more card, Dan Stegnick.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for hearing me tonight. It's been a while. I'm Dan Stedjink. I'm here specifically to talk about an infrastructure problem that we've got that maybe some attention should be paid to before we do any expansion on there. I'm specifically talking about the sewage processing under capacity we have. Best estimates from the wastewater now is that we have 12 million gallons a day of processing capacity. We've had single day events of 26 million gallons in 2011. This current sewage plant was actually sold on almost a 30 million gallon per day capacity. I'm going to go over the sewage system overflows since we first started filming these in November 11th of 2014. I'm going to just start from 2014. January 4th, 2014, 20 gallons, Heathcliff. February 24th, 2 gallons, Farallon. April 26th, 108 gallons, Goodman Road. August 11th, 2014, 37 gallons, Big Sur. And this next one is the first day I started filming it. December 11th, 2014, 203,700 gallons, Lindemar Boulevard. December 11th, 16 gallons, Manor Drive. December 11th, 124,500 gallons, Anza Drive. December 11th, 6,875 gallons, Lindemar Boulevard. August 18th, 2015, 1 gallon on Juanita. January 6th of this year, 2016, 91,100 gallons on 500 Lindemar Boulevard. January 19th, 29,400 gallons of sewage at 500 Lindemar. March 13th, last month, 3,460 gallons of sewage on Lindemar Boulevard. And March 5th, less than a month ago, 70,140 gallons of spilled sewage on Anza Drive. If we take out the two outliers there, Lindemar Boulevard and Anza Drive are getting 2,000 times the amount of sewage of any other event on here. We've got 529,000 gallons of sewage spilled on Lindemar Boulevard or Anza since January 1st, 2014. Versus 2,000 gallons anywhere else in the city. The day we started filming these, the numbers jumped by 200,000 gallons per event. It's a serious problem that anytime we're adding anything, hotels, houses, between Calera Creek and Lindemar Boulevard, where the problem is, we've got to take a look. And it's not as much a problem from Calera Creek North because it's a completely different set of processing capacities. But it's a real problem in Lindemar, and we're tired of your crap. Thank you very much.
All right. I don't have any other cards for oral communications, so we're going to move on to tonight's study session, which is a discussion of a conceptual plan to redevelop the Pacifica Quarry site with a program of wetland and hillside open space, creekside park with recreational trails, a clustered commercial residential village adjacent to the Rockaway Beach Commercial District, and a hotel conference venue. The proposed action tonight is for the Planning Commission to take no formal action because this is a study session. Staff is requesting that the Planning Commission provide feedback on the conceptual plan and hear public comments. Staff report.
Good evening, honorable commissioners and members of the public. I'm Associate Planner Christian Murdoch. I hope you'll forgive my stuttering start with the roll call, but hopefully we can get back on track here. The applicant is here to introduce the Planning Commission to its concept for a mixed-use development and redevelopment of the former quarry site. The quarry site is an 86-acre site, privately owned. Approximately 21 to 22 acres are addressed for development in the applicant's concept. That leaves approximately 65 acres for permanently dedicated open space and new trail construction. The mixed-use component would include commercial, retail, and office space, residential apartments, hotel and conference venue, and as I mentioned, additional recreational and outdoor amenities, including an outdoor amphitheater. The project is very conceptual at this stage, and the applicant did not provide detailed plans. They indicated and provided a conceptual site plan, as well as will present this evening different architectural themes and configurations that may eventually take part in this application for development. The concept as proposed would require a number of entitlements from the city and from the California Coastal Commission. For starters, as you're probably aware, the site is zoned C3X, which under the city's regulations would require a vote of the people for any residential component for the project. And so the applicant is moving forward with an initiative for the November ballot, and we'll begin gathering signatures soon to qualify to hopefully allow the residential component for the project. Aside from that, we mentioned the mixed-use commercial components, which would require site development permits, or rezoning to the planned development zoning district, and potentially a general plan and/or local coastal plan amendment. The surrounding land uses, as you're probably aware, include Maury Point to the north of the project site and the West Fairway Park neighborhood to the north of that, as well as the existing Rockaway Beach commercial area to the south. The Planning Commission's role this evening, of course, is to receive the applicant's presentation and, of course, to provide feedback on the concept as it's proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. At this point, we'll hear from, questions for staff. Commissioner Cooper.
I was looking a little bit through the package, and in regards to parking, both for the mixed-use live-work residential areas and for the office space, I assume it's hard to give a calculation now without really any plans or any square footages for these units. But for a live-work type of arrangement, what are the city's regulations as far as parking is concerned?
The city does not have an explicit standard for a live-work type of arrangement in its zoning code. The code does provide some flexibility, and where there's not a specific requirement defined or where there's a mix of uses that aren't specifically defined, it allows a combination of the most similar types of uses to aggregate. So at a minimum, we would look to whatever the appropriate residential parking requirement was for the particular type of unit, the floor plan, the ownership type, et cetera. And depending on the scale and extent of the commercial component, there could conceivably be an additional requirement for that. But yes, it is too early at this point to understand exactly the configuration and quantity of parking for this type of development.
Commissioner Gordon.
Thanks, Chair. Following up on Commissioner Cooper's question about the live-work, what's the, I don't know if you guys are familiar with what the limitations are in terms of the scope of what work can be going on in the live-work units. You know, for example, some cities have restrictions like, okay, you can't have clients coming and going, or, you know, just, I don't know, roughly if you can comment on the scope of what kind of working can happen in those units in Pacifica.
Sure. So similar to the parking requirement, the city doesn't have explicit live-work requirements, as that term is commonly understood in contemporary land use planning. The city does have home occupation regulations, which allows a limited business capacity for traditional residences. Those types of uses allow what would generally be considered as low-impact professional services type of activities, like the home-based accountant or attorney, for example. There is a provision under the home occupation regulations to allow a limited number of customers, no more than 3 per day, under certain circumstances to come to the residence. So I can imagine something similar as a baseline, but those specific implementing zoning standards would have to be developed if this type of development and this concept was approved.
Thanks.
Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I have one more question for you. You know, it's a sore subject for a lot of people, but Highway 1, and we look at this bypass road that's going through the property area. Does the owner in this case have the right to restrict who is on that particular roadway?
That's not a level of specificity to which we've reached with the applicant in our discussions. If it were a private road and approved and allowed to be a private road, I can imagine there may be some ability to restrict the type of traffic, but it's my understanding in conversations with the developer that the intention is to make this a publicly accessible road.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more questions at the moment. At this point, I invite the applicant to come up and provide a presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners, staff. My name is Elizabeth Shreve, and I'm a principal with SWA Group. We're planners and landscape architects in San Francisco. It's a pleasure to be here this evening to sort of initiate this conversation. We know this is the first of many kind of forums and venues and opportunities to speak with you and work with the community on this project through the initiative, the voter initiative, and also through a full entitlement and design review and environmental review process that'll be taking place through the city. So you know the quarry well, and we know that it's a really amazing and fabulous and gorgeous piece of land right along the spectacular Pacifica coastline. 2 parcels. Do I have a pointer? I guess I don't have a pointer. Two parcels totaling 86 acres, 47 acres on that quarry parcel to the left there. The two red parcels are the quarry property, and 39 acres in what we call the flats, which is parcel 2 to the east. And in a sense that you could think that there you see it little smaller there. I'm sorry that I don't have a pointer.
There's a laser pointer on there.
Is it in the front, Christian? Oh, is it? Oh, there we go. There we go. Here we go. Great. Thank you. So here we have the property here. And you can see that it is kind of a missing piece between the Maury Point open space and the Rockaway open space. And then there's this great, wonderful kind of conservation lands and parklands all around it. So you're really so lucky to live in a place that has these great open space resources. The wonderful and amazing history of the quarry, one of the oldest quarries in California, starting in 1776, with providing whitewash and limestone to San Francisco as it built and as it rebuilt after the 1906 earthquake. Quarrying expanded considerably in World War II and in the post-war period to support construction, and then ended in around 1987. The quarry closed as a commercial operation. And in the 1990s, of course, land was given over to the water recycling plant and the restoration of Calera Creek, and this recycled water now sustains the creek and sustains terrific wildlife habitats and wetlands within that creek corridor, which is really great. So one of the legacies, however, of that 200 years of mining is a site that's degraded, it's scarred, there's really very little soil, healthy soil, there's unstable slopes, there's coastal erosion and undercutting right where people are actually walking on these trails, very dangerous, a lot of unstable surfaces that people are hiking on, including some people from my staff. And then into this disturbed soil condition comes invasive species such as the pampas grass. So what we have here today is a site that's really very degraded and really needs some love and attention to kind of bring it back to a sustainable level of environmental ecological health. So this is a challenge, and it's an opportunity, and it's also a fantastic and incredible site along the coast. So what we see here is a challenge to really restore the old quarry site to a landscape of renewed open space and community-friendly uses. And we sort of think of this as restore and connect. Connect the community and restore the site. But it has to be done properly, and it has to be done in a thoughtful way and with significant investment involved. So it's kind of a balance of finding the right program so that you can also achieve these goals for site restoration, enhanced access, improved trail safety, and so forth. So what we have conceived, and as your staff said, we're really at a conceptual level of land use planning and site planning. We don't have detailed designs figured out, but we're taking a look at it. And what we've come up with is a quarry village, which is a clustered development here adjacent to Rockaway with retail, office, and housing, multifamily housing, and then a hotel and conference venue in the bowl itself with an amphitheater, and then a series of trails that we'll see in diagram in a minute. So, and then what that allows for is over 75% of the site is retained in open space. And we think this is a good way to treat this site in a responsible way that kind of helps to activate the Rockaway area and extends the existing road pattern of Rockaway. So there's a real place, and it's kind of a there down at Rockaway. And then makes use of this kind of very wonderful bowl-shaped form that both offers views out but also shelters from the wind. So it's a very intriguing and wonderful site to be able to design for. A few things on the site that we're paying special attention to. Setbacks and easements. There's a utility easement along the highway. There's also a highway setback along Highway 1 that's required, so all the development stays west of that. And then we kind of gave ourselves 100-foot setbacks along the creek, from the top of the creek, because we recognize that this is a very important trail, open space area that people enjoy now. This is a private site, but it's used for casual recreation by the public, and we think we want to help continue that and also have a good setback from that creek for ecological and habitat and landscape values. So those are a couple of the constraints that we see. And I want to say that there's been a tremendous amount of background studies on this site, geotechnical studies by the owner, archaeological studies, biological, geotech, so forth. So we have quite a bit of great information that's been developed as part of the reclamation plan. So again, looking at the trails, here's our site, and one of the things that we want to do is connect that coastal trail through the site, but we want it to be safe, and we want it to be a place where people are not going to hurt themselves, and where they're going to enjoy that continuity along the coast. So this diagram shows some of the existing trails, which are in yellow, and there's that kind of zigzaggy thing that comes down and goes through Rockaway, goes into the site, and there's an existing trail here, and then there's existing kind of connectors to Maury Point. And one of the things we want to do is make that connection in a safe way. So the orange are the proposed trails, and the pink are the trails that are existing but are improved as part of this project. So again, this is somewhat preliminary, but basically these are the routes that we're proposing. And along with the trails, along the ridge here, we've got a couple of overlooks. So we've got an overlook opportunity here, and then one down as in the hotel. And these are publicly accessible trails and publicly accessible overlooks. Vehicular circulation. One of the commissioners asked the question about this road. We've been calling this Quarry Road. I think I named it Quarry Road, but it could be named anything road. But so this is conceived as a publicly accessible full-service street. It does possibly serve as an emergency vehicle. If you had a shutdown on Highway 1, you could take this as an alternate route, but it's not an emergency vehicle route. It's a full-service road that goes from Reina Del Mar up here down to the Rockaway area. And then smaller streets that serve the hotel, and this limited access up to the bungalows, the hotel bungalows in this location. And then sort of what we call quiet alleys, which run through the residential, and we'll look at that in a little more detail in a minute. Stoplight existing here, stoplight existing here. This is a right in, right out. And then this is San Marlo Way, and we see that as obviously an existing road that would be improved and northward into the property as part of this project. Stormwater, we've started thinking about how we treat water on the site, incorporating bioremediation and stormwater water treatment, using the kind of historic drainage pattern and integrating those bioremediation areas and bioretention into the park and landscape features of the project. We know that we have some wetland areas and some temporary water containment issues here during reclamation, and we want to kind of look at a strategy in more detail for how that works out. So site design, this is the site plan, and then here you have that big area of wetland open space, that kind of Calera Creek coming down here, that's existing now. The meadow open space, that amphitheater that takes the bowl shape and kind of terraces it so that people can sit here. You could have a performance or a gathering in this location, a wedding, all kinds of things. Hillside open space preserved, those trails along the ridge and overlook points. 188 rooms in the hotel, 12 bungalow units, and 13,000 square feet of conferencing space. We're trying to really match the conferencing with the hotel program so that it's not a big conferencing venue where a lot of people are coming just for the conferencing. Essentially, the hotel is sized so you could have an event, a seminar, a workshop or something, and people would stay and go to and fill the conference space, so it's kind of in balance with each other. So it's about 50 square feet per person is how it works out in the hospitality industry. And then the bungalows are you can imagine sort of that the CEO have their rooms up there, and they have the small breakout meetings in that location. Down here you see the retail, up to 35,000 square feet of retail with up to 35,000 square feet of office above it. And here's the housing cluster. We'll look in more detail at that in a minute. This kind of just highlights the land use program. Again, 75% of the site in open space, about 7 acres for the hotel, about 6 acres for that mixed use commercial, and about 8 acres for the housing, a total of 86 acres. The sorts of open space we're thinking about, the terracing of the amphitheater so that it forms a place for people to naturally gather and have an event or a performance. Some safer trails, places for people to walk their dogs, some boardwalks, environmental education so you could have kids come and learn about the wetlands and so forth. And then in the Creekside Park, also you could have outdoor exercise classes, dogs, you could watch birds and so forth. Want to keep the dogs away from the birds, but we all know about that problem. So here's a little close-up of the Quarry Village. And one of the things that we think would be really cool is this beachside plaza, where there's an existing parking lot here, and you could have a plaza with maybe a cafe on it, and it would really be a fun place to kind of go and hang out at the ocean with these trails, go for a walk, get your cup of coffee, and hang out there. San Marlo Way, parking tucked behind the buildings in this location, and we did take a rough pass at sizing the parking to match the program using your city parking standards. The housing, we've got live-work units on the outside and the apartments on the inside. It's all multifamily. They do have parking tucked in to the units, which enables you to avoid a lot of surface parking. And then you've got guest parking over here. Here's an image at the top that we drew up in my office. A concept for that beachside plaza with the retail kind of facing out and just a place to kind of hang out and enjoy being at the oceanfront. And some concepts along the bottom for what sorts of things might happen down there. Umbrellas, who knows, maybe a pub. And then if this is a view that we rendered up looking down San Marlo, so you recognize this is Old County Road, and here it would go across the site, so that would be an intersection. And then we've widened San Marlo on the north side to create a kind of nice wide promenade along the north side of the street with what they call a sharrow, which you're probably familiar with as a kind of signed bike shared lane for bicycles in that location. You know, keeping the scale of the buildings similar to what's already in Rockaway. Rockaway has this wonderful, charming kind of seaside quality to it, I think. I'm from New England, and to me it reminds me of kind of a Cape Cod village, and I think that two-story scale is very appropriate. Some precedents for what that retail street might look like. And then apartments, 2 to 4-story apartments, the 4-story units being tucked away to the side so they don't obstruct the view. And we have not settled on an architectural style, obviously, because this selection is kind of all over the map, but just to give you an idea of sort of the scale that we're thinking about. And likewise for the live work, really the live work consists of the workspace being on the ground floor with the parking tucked behind it, and then the living space above that. And those units would, because they're on the edge, would be 2-story units. It'd be nice and low against that Creekside Park. And here we have the hotel and conference. So it's kind of the idea of fitting this building into the contours of the quarry with the restaurant and lobby and overlook at this hinge. The ridge kind of comes down here and then goes back up again. So you can get some views through that little notch there. That creates kind of a lot of excitement, and you want to make that be the public space so people can come and have a meal there and enjoy that terrific view on the ocean. And here's the amphitheater, and you can see a little bit how these trails start to connect up to Maury Point. Some images of what the hotel might be like. This is actually a hotel we found online, and it's near Barcelona, but it's exactly the same size, and we like the way it was kind of hinged to fit into a hillside site. And the bungalows, sort of a smaller scale golf cart access up that road. And this is a rendering looking out from the hotel back over the wetlands. And I really like this because I think it shows how you could come down and you could enjoy this place, and it's a vision of restoring this landscape to something that's healthy and supports habitat, but also brings people to it. So it's kind of that great blending of the two goals of restore and connect. And with that, I think that's about all we have for you.
All right, thank you. Let's see, we've probably got some questions, I imagine. Commissioner Gordon.
Sure. Thank you for that presentation. That's a lot to digest. I'm very appreciative of the emphasis on restoring the green area. It seems very environmentally oriented, which is great. One question I had, it was in terms of the bungalows. I had a hard time imagining, in terms of elevation, where they would sit. Are they? I mean, so you've got that ridge. Is it on the east side of the ridge, on the west side, on the ocean side of the ridge, on the non-ocean side of the ridge? Is it on top of the ridge? How far tucked away from it?
Well, I don't have a detailed topo map with me, but that ridge comes up and it kind of flattens out. And so we were thinking we would sort of tuck them around the ridge. So they do have ocean views, but they don't pop out a lot. So they might be just under the ridge line so that they don't, break the skyline very much.
Yeah, that's where I was getting. So if you're standing at the, for example, if you're standing over there,
yeah.
and you're looking out towards that hillside, it's not going to impact the view shed.
If you're standing like, so these guys were standing sort of, maybe here, and they're looking out. I would think that you might be able to see them from the hotel itself. You probably
Right.
could not see them as well from farther away or from the east.
Like, for example, from the path, if you're walking along the
Creekside Park?
Creekside path, yeah.
Yeah, good
And you're looking
question.
up, would you be able to,
So if you're
like,
walking,
in other words, are they on the ocean side or on the?
well, here's the ridge, right?
There you go.
So that shows you the topo. I think they would be hard to see from here, but, we could do a visual analysis of that pretty easily, because we have this modeled.
Can you show with your marker where the top of the ridge is there? Right there.
This is the top of this ridge. Do you know, Ashley, if I have the right spot? That looks right to me. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it's tucked on the ocean side.
Yeah, they're on the ocean side and they're a little bit below the ridge. So this is actually an existing kind of dirt road that comes up, and we looked at a lot of ways to develop this site, and for a while we were looking at developing this flank, and this was really visible. So we just thought, oh, just keep this existing road because it works. That's why it's there. And tuck these guys behind here. But we can definitely analyze that using our digital modeling. I can't, but some people can.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, good evening. Thank you for the presentation. It was very nice and kind of exciting to look at things like that. I was reading, though, in the initiative measure, and I had a couple questions. One of them was it stated about the fact that it would not exceed, the units would not exceed 2 stories. But in another point, it says, provide no structures shall exceed 4 stories in height. Can you explain a little bit about the difference on that?
So the retail commercial is 2-story maximum, and the housing is 4-story maximum. And the hotel, I think, is 4 stories, but a lot of it depends where you measure it from. So it pokes up above the ridge, but it's measured from the quarry bowl floor. So basically, 2 stories, 4 stories.
The reason I was asking is just for our own ruling here in town about the 35-foot limitations on that. So thank you. I also see that it says at least 20% must be designated as affordable for very low, lower, or moderate income households for the housing. Can you explain a little bit about that?
As I was driving up here, I was wondering if someone was going to ask me that question.
In this town,
you.
yes.
You made my dream come true. Exactly how that's measured, I don't know how the city tends to measure their affordable housing. I imagine you have a income level, and then 20% would be of our apartments, not of the total, but of the 181 apartments, would be in that very low, lower, or moderate income. I think, Christian or Tina, do you have any wisdom on how you define affordable housing?
We would follow the standard that the county housing authority sets forth. I don't have those levels right off the top of my head, so that's what we would follow.
Well, the main thing I was looking at, because I know those figures are already set, the main thing I was looking at was the 20% must be designated part. So, and I guess one question would be, would that be a negotiable percentage figure?
I think that the initiative is pretty set at this point. It's been filed. And so, I mean, I think it could go at least 20%. You know, It's pretty much what it says.
Yeah.
You can't go lower than that.
Right. Thank you.
Well, I got a question. Thanks for the presentation. That was really well put. I got a question about the vehicular circulation
Yes.
diagram. I see the San Marlo Way as being right in and right out, kind of the way it has to be. Just because I think of the way the traffic signal work, I mean, the way the road's laid out there. For the Reina del Mar Coy Road intersection, how do you contemplate the egress ingress there?
That's currently signalized. So we're just initiating a transportation study. We have a firm called Nelson Nygaard who are working, I think they're actually out there on Thursday this week if you see some traffic looking guys out there. They're doing their field visit on Thursday. So we have not designed the turning movements for these intersections yet. San Marlo Way is currently right in, right out. So that's why we marked it that way. And I can't imagine that we would want left turns out of it. There isn't now, we would not propose that. So we kept that on there. So and I imagine that we would certainly keep this traffic signal. And so these are both existing traffic signals. So they would be full, I would guess that they would be full turning movements, signalized intersections at Rockaway down here and Reina del Mar up here, as they are now.
So the way if you're going north into San Francisco, it would be at the Reina del Mar intersection.
Yeah, I really would defer to our transportation consult firm that's working on it for, I don't want to talk traffic. I don't know what the modifications are they're going to propose to optimize the traffic situation yet. If you have suggestions, then I can certainly convey those.
I think that intersection has probably been the subject of more suggestions than any other four-way intersection in this town. That is the bottleneck for Highway 1, mainly because of the Valamar School that's located there. So when you talk traffic, especially during the school year, that is the problem right there.
I will definitely relay that. I think we are aware of that too.
I'm sure your traffic engineers are. There's a raft of studies on that. So yeah, that would be I was kind of curious about whether there's any other traffic improvements you've been thinking of other than. Well,
previous proposals have suggested an additional access point at this location. We haven't studied that, but we have seen that in other proposals for this site. But as I said, we're just getting started really evaluating the on-site circulation and the access as well.
Any timetable for coming up with anything?
Well, over the next few months, we're going to be submitting materials to the city, project description, PD application. So as part of that work, we'll be submitting proposals for circulation as well. A circulation plan is required for the PD development plan submittal, for example. So we would definitely be including our findings in that. And then it would go through the entire CEQA review process.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. How are you today?
Thanks. How are you doing?
Good. Listening to your presentation, thank you very much for that presentation. I do have some comments for you, and again, this is my opinion, probably not all of my commissioners. But I think that the road in general is going to provide a headache for this area, and I'm not saying cut it out. I'm just simply saying that the road is going to be used by commuter traffic because they're going to try to get off Highway 1 and they're going to use it. It's going to back up, and that is of concern to the residents that are in that area or who are living in that area. May be affected by the traffic that's going to back up. I share my fellow commissioners' concern for that intersection. I think there's only four or five cars you can turn left on when you're headed north, and I can see it boggling up, people getting caught in the intersection. I see some problems with that. The other at San Marlo Way, if you've turned right off of San Marlo Way off of Highway 1, that is a very dangerous intersection for ingress or egress to Highway 1. That I'm not sure I want any more traffic on that as it is. If you try to pull in, you're kind of going off of a ledge, and if you try to pull out, you're likely spinning your tires as you're pulling out because it is so steep in that area. So I would be concerned about that particular right turn. Noticing your pictures of San Marlo Way that you had there, it's a very narrow street, and I don't understand how we're going to get 2 cars down that street along with all the pedestrians that you saw. It seems that there's no on-street parking in that area. You've made it a sidewalk, which is it's an architectural feature. I'm just saying that I think that street's really narrow as it is.
We would propose to widen it onto our property.
If you look at that, do you have that photo real quick?
I'm sorry, our image?
Yeah, your image.
Yeah, let's see, where is that?
Keep going, keep going. So if you look at that crosswalk, there's no on-street parking to the right, and it looks, I'm not sure that car is parked or if that's a car is coming towards us, but it's really narrow.
This car?
Yes, that car right there. I don't know how it looks down there. I'd be concerned about how wide that street is and getting cars in and out along with emergency traffic, because there's going to be a lot going on, I think, in that area, especially with your plaza back there. So I would be concerned about the fire trucks being able to go side by side within that area and in service.
I think we definitely need to work with the city on that and size it, but we do have the flexibility to make it wider because it can expand to the north.
One of the things that I also was looking at is that, you know, we have a lot of trails out there, and we have the existing Clara Creek Trail. I mean, I ride it all the time on my bike and walk it. I think it's a wonderful area. With your hotel guests and a lot of other traffic being on that road, are you going to light that trail? Is that something that you had considered? Or I'm just looking for safety. I'm looking for all the people who are going to be on that trail. At night, it's almost impossible to see anybody when you're biking, unless you have a light, but it would be of concern.
Can you tell me which trail?
So it's the trail that goes the distance all the way from the waist. There you go.
Let me find the trail.
So the trail is that red trail. There you go. So it's the red trail that you see there?
This guy?
Yes. So that's currently not a lighted trail. So I would be concerned with any guests that might be walking in your hotel, maybe getting, because it is a bike trail. So I was just kind of concerned with how that safety would work and what that would look like and what the light would have to do with that area. I'm going to share an idea with you, which is probably not popular with a lot of people, but I think there's a lot of wetland open space, and I also believe very strongly in public outdoor type of soccer fields, of baseball fields, something that we can do for our kids. My family's a huge soccer player, and there's not a lot of places to play. If that was next to a wetlands open space, and I'm not saying convert the whole thing, I'm not even saying convert half of it, I'm just simply saying if that was a community type of space that people could park and enjoy. Right now there's not a lot of parking in that area. There's not a lot that would draw me to that north side of the wetlands. Right now there's a small dog park there, and I think there's the entrance to the water treatment facility. But it's really not utilized because there's nothing there. But if there was a soccer field there or a turf field or something that the kids could use, it would bring a lot more people to the area to really enjoy that area. I'm not sure that the wetland open space, the way that I saw it, you would even have access anywhere near the center of that open space. It seems like there would be a trail around it, but right now people walk through it, so it's a well-utilized area. I do agree that there's a lot of invasive species on that plant, and I think that Golden Gate National Recreational Area has taken a lot of due diligence in helping that whole area out. So I'm glad to see that you're thinking about restoring it to the natural environment and getting rid of a lot of that invasive foliage. I'm not a big proponent of the hotel design that you've picked. I thought it was kind of blocky, personally. It didn't seem like it fit into the quarry at all. It seemed like you looked at it and it goes, oh, there's a hotel, rather than, oh, there's kind of a neat structure and it blends in more with the environment. It really stood out to me. So I thought it could have been incorporated a little bit better. But I'm not an architect, I'm an engineer. So that's my personal preference to the area. I do like the fact that you've put seating on the roof to allow for a view of the public, because I think a lot of people would appreciate that and enjoy that. I'm concerned about the amphitheater, and the reason I'm concerned about the amphitheater is because if you do have a concert there, which I would think would be great, where's everybody going to park? how are we going to get there? I don't see, if you're full in your hotel space, I don't see a lot of places to hold an event. And I'm sure people would like to hold events there. It's a beautiful place. And it actually is warmer during the summertime because it kind of traps the heat there. So I guess I don't see how that's going to work within your site plan and development. The other concern that I have is the concern that you brought up initially when you were showing these slides is these public trails that you have. That's a very steep cliff, and I know that there is concern with the public of keeping safe on those trails. But how far do you go? Do you put handrails in? Do you put lighting in? Do you restrict the movement to certain times of the day? People are going to be walking their dogs up there. And so I don't kind of know how that's going to work, but I do know if I was on top of that cliff area, I would look down and there would be a huge cavern, and there's going to be people not familiar with the hills, and so I would be concerned with the safety of some of the places that you've put the trails, just because I've been up there a lot on my bike and I've been walking up there. I do like the ideas of the bungalows. I think those are really a neat idea. I didn't see any kind of common space for that bungalow area if it's a hotel. So if there was like a little conference building or something that people would meet in as they're doing their hotel, or a common barbecue area or whatever it was. So I didn't quite see the function there. Again, I'm not an architect, but I was kind of looking at it going, well, it's bungalows, but it's a hotel, but how do I meet if I'm a business owner and I want to meet with somebody, with families?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I certainly think that the live-work units in the apartments, just the layout, to me was not very exciting. I like the idea of a live-work unit. I think we have a lot of small businesses in Pacifica that could really benefit from having a live-work type of arrangements and also being affordable. But I didn't see anything that really excited me. I like the concept, but the layout seemed kind of boxy to me. It just seemed kind of on the side. I'm going through my comments here, so bear with me. Some of the trails that you've shown here, I mean, I do bike these trails. I am concerned with the amount of grading that's going to have to take place just to get a road up there, and to improve these trails, especially the ones that go on the opposite side of the creek side trail that you have there. That's a pretty steep slope with a pretty rough, I guess, transversing up the hillside. So I'm looking at, well, if I was going to look at it, how much would actually be disturbed of the land that you have there? And so if you look at if you go to
this trail?
No, go to the farther up towards the right there. Right there. That whole trail right there.
That's existing, actually.
It's existing, but it's pretty steep.
It's about 15%. Steady.
So I'd be concerned about how much displacement you're going to have, what that would look like, where the drainage is going to come from. I mean, right now we have a pretty clean runoff from the quarry into the creek, and I would be concerned, I would assume that since all of our storm drains run into the creek, that how would we take precautions that we wouldn't be dipping the oil into the creek. So I do like the retention ponds that you've put in as a first kind of, let's just say I had a spill. Let's just say you came up there, you were refueling something, and you had a fuel spill. I wouldn't want that to go directly in the creek, so I think putting into a retention pond first is a really smart idea, and I'd be looking for that as a commissioner, I think, to make sure that you've taken that into account for the safety. Amphitheaters, and just again, the parking is a big issue. Just because we've had a lot of projects in front of here, and everybody, if you're going to do an amphitheater, it's a sunny day out, everybody's at the beach, everybody wants to go to your plaza, everybody wants to have coffee. There's not going to be a place for everybody. It's just not possible. I don't know what people feel about expanding your quarry road to have street parking on the quarry road. It seemed to me that would be kind of a good alternative for having more parking available to the people. If you were to widen it and put parking along the quarry road, that would add quite a bit of capability there, and especially if you wanted to do something with the northern portion for public access, not saying all this is wetland and maybe reserving a little bit of it for a potential outdoor facility. I think that would be really kind of cool. Thank you, Chair.
All right. I think we're going to get to public comment pretty soon here. I just want to note that I've got 2 cards for speaking. So if you want to speak on the public comment, please fill out these cards and get them up to me. And while we're doing that, I just want to mention that I understand that these plans are general, and I don't want to get into the weeds quite yet on the specifics. But I do agree with Commissioner Cooper's notion that some sort of a soccer field or a play field would be a good carve out somewhere in this, because we are talking, if we went with the multifamily residential densities you proposed, there could be some 500 families there. So, or I mean 500, there could be 200 families, 500 people, 600 people utilizing these recreational facilities. There could be a lot of kids. And we really do have a dearth of playable fields in this town, so they would be needing, this is almost another little neighborhood. This is another little neighborhood, and all those, I presume, kids are going to need a place to play. So I do agree with that. And then before we get to public comments, I guess the one takeaway that I've got on this is just with that intersection at Reina del Mar, the problem is traffic, not so much associated, I would think, with the hotels, with the hotel and the commercial, because the traffic problems in the morning when people are trying to leave for work or trying to drop their kids off at school. And so the traffic issues would be associated with the residential development that you've got and the number of multi-family units proposed. So I could see where if you reach a point where the level of service remains at D or F at that intersection, or comes to, I mean, I think it's F now, or if it's not, I'd be surprised, I forget. But you might want to consider scaling back the number of multifamily residential units to allow the traffic to get through that intersection, because that is probably the focal point of the concern that a lot of people have. Okay. I don't see any other lights here, so I was going to move on and to the public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Loeb. I'm not taking these, well, wait, yeah, you're up first. I've just got scores of cards here.
A bunch of people before I put my card in, but I'm happy
There were. I know. You landed on top.
How much time do I get time? Do I get 3 minutes?
You get 3 minutes.
Peter Loeb, Rockaway Beach. Those bungalows are 2,500 square feet. That's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. That's not a bungalow. San Marlo Way, if the Caltrans Calera Parkway widening program goes through, San Marlo Way is blocked off. So this whole plan, I'm doing everything I possibly can to make sure that that widening doesn't happen. But if it does, this notion of entrance and egress and ingress, whatever, from San Marlo Way doesn't work. But mainly, I guess what I want to say is, I don't get it. I don't know why we're here. I think that the planning commissioner's time and the planning staff's time is being wasted, and the public's time is being wasted. There's an initiative petition that's being circulated out there. What happens if that goes to the ballot? What are you folks going to be doing here in the next several months? Looking at plans? What if you say that we don't like the quote bungalows on the ridge top? They've got to go. Or what if you say it's too many housing units? What does that do to the initiative petition? And if there's a measure on the ballot, what if people vote no on that measure? What happens to any of this time that has been spent here? What if people vote yes? And meanwhile, you've had all kinds of plans that have changed the whole configuration of the project. I don't get it. I really don't. Why are we here talking about this when there's an effort, at least, to put a measure on the ballot with a specific project plan in it? This is a waste of time. Thank you.
All right, and let's see, we're going to get back on track with people who put their cards in first. Tom Clifford.
Somebody's trying to take my spot.
Sorry, Tom.
That's okay. Evening again. My comments are going to have to be based on the initiative has been passed, and you have something to plan on. Because, as Pete pointed out, otherwise there's no point to this. So we'll say the initiative is passed. One thing I did not hear the applicant, architect, whatever we want to call her, mention is that they were talking about a conservation bank in that open space area, which would mean that area is not going to be usable for other things. If it's a conservation bank, you don't put soccer fields in it. You don't put playing fields. You don't walk in it. You have to stay out of it. It's strictly to conserve that area in lieu of other places, building on places that needed to be conserved. So get that in your mind, that if that's passed and this project goes forward, that area is a conservation bank. It's not something that can be tinkered with once it's set up. In terms of the overall project, there's many things I like about it. I like the idea of bringing Rockaway Beach up to critical mass, actually having enough business there to bring people in. I like the idea of the hotel primarily because I know that we need the TOT, and that brings up another issue. If you're going to build the housing and you're going to build the hotel and the bungalows, you have to have that all phased in. You don't go ahead and build all the housing and they say, oops, we can't get a hotel entity to come in and build and operate the hotel, so we're not going to do that, and then we just wind up with housing. This entire plan has to be done in a phased manner. 10% of the housing gets built, all the foundation and stuff for the hotel is put in. Before you can build any of the bungalows, you have to have the hotel in place and say 50% of the commercial area and the housing area. These are things that are going to have to be thought about as this moves forward, if it passes the initiative, if the initiative passes. So just putting that out there, these are the things that you're going to have to think about once we get past the initiative stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chaya Gordon.
Good evening. There are so many things wrong with this proposal, it's hard to know where to start. I'm going to try and cover 5 of them. Number 1, the quarry could be considered the crown jewel of Pacifica. This coastal open space has been used as public land since the quarry stopped being a working quarry. As far as I can tell, my reading of this proposal is that it does not require particular features, which allows it to be changed considerably, yet the developer wants entitlements based on a nebulous, non-binding plan. This is both wrong and troubling to me. Worst case scenario, we could end up with a Costco, but there are other scenarios that would be equally undesirable because the proposal is way out of scale for the area. The plan requires what is current open space to be commercial. 4-story apartments, a 4-story hotel, 2,500 square feet units, an amphitheater, all where there is currently perfectly fine habitat that the community of Pacifica is currently getting quite a lot of enjoyment out of. We need to keep the whole quarry as open space available to everyone. I cannot speak for all of Pacifica, but I would bet that the people of Pacifica do not want this, and I don't think there's a chance that it's going to pass as a ballot initiative. Also, I think that a private developer is not the appropriate party to be making really serious environmental decisions for a coastal area. Okay, number 2, as for the argument that the project will bring a lot of hotel tax revenue to the city, the developer is clearly going to make a ton of money by building and selling off the components, but there is nothing to stop them, for example, from taking the supposed tax-generating hotel and not building it. And there's every reason to think that the apartment units could be rented out as Airbnb units. Nothing would prevent that, and the city would never see a penny. Number 3, the traffic nightmare, which other people have spoken about. But most of all, sea level rise will doom this project if it is built. Erosion will happen sooner rather than later. For example, there could be flooding of the ocean through the wetlands into the bowl. You can't build sustainable development in Pacifica by building on the coast in 2016. Pacifica needs to rethink where to build. We need a process that is thorough. It should be science, evidence-based. It should include thorough public comment, and it should be part of the general plan update so that it can inform all future development. Anything else is going to be a failure. Thank you very much.
Next up, Denny Asnes, followed by Lori Goldberg.
Good evening. My name is Denny Asnes. I live on Rockaway Beach Avenue. The previous speakers at the end spoke to what I was going to start with, which is the issue of sea level rise. There was a forum in Pacifica, a very well-attended forum last week about the issue of sea level rise, very informative. It's hard to imagine why a developer would want to propose this type of development in this location except for profit, certainly not for the good of Pacifica or with any foresight into the issue of sea level rise, how it's already affecting Pacifica, how it will be affecting Pacifica in the near and distant future. I walk through the quarry to Maury Point every day. I'm a bird watcher. I also love dogs. I think they all can be compatible in the area. This area that's being talked about being, reconditioned as a wetland already exists to some degree in that way. There's a flock of meadowlarks that lives there half of the year that would be, obviously, their habitat would be wiped out. I mean, there are a lot of different species living there, which would lose their habitat. Also, as I've walked up on some of those hillsides, the deep fissures have grown dramatically over this last year. I stay on the east side of them at this point because I want to be able to keep coming to Planning Commission meetings. But this is an area that seems to me quite close to some of this proposed development. It's not a safe or sustainable area to develop in this manner. The answer to erosion is not development. Erosion is a natural process that's going to continue, as we've seen in Pacifica and as I see on my walks. There are so many unanswered and disturbing questions about this specific project, confusing language, additional traffic, as people have talked about, maintenance of public areas, possibility of big box stores, who will manage public access areas. Before any development is done here, there needs to be a serious investigation of the impact of sea level rise in terms of Pacifica as a whole in this area specifically. Thank you.
Lori Goldberg, followed by Dan Stegnick.
Hi, Lori Goldberg in Valamar. Since I've lived in Pacifica for about 35 years, The quarry has always been open space. I walk through there all the time, and people come from all over the world, all of different places, and people have their dogs, people really enjoy the area now, and I just can't imagine people enjoying the area with, it just kind of reminds me, first of all, of another Peebles ploy, a developer who doesn't live in Pacifica, all this housing, all these apartments or whatever. Where's everyone going to park? Just because you have an apartment, there could be like 10 people living in those apartments. There could be 5 houses, 5 cars to those apartments. How many visitors are they going to have? We don't need an amphitheater in the quarry. That seems like a strange place. I like some of what Mr. Cooper said, but I don't like the idea of taking beautiful wetlands for birds, for wild animals, and paving it, making it into a soccer field or something. No, that just doesn't sound good. I'm really disappointed with this whole development idea. And when whoever owns that property, I walk up, there's a trail I walk up to go up Maury Point so I can go down the stairs and up the stairs. And there was I don't know, whoever was in there was just driving their forklift all over the place, didn't matter where they were going, making all these weird trails. In fact, they caused some of the erosion on that trail that I walk up. And I thought, if someone does that to that area, how are they going to respect that area when they don't respect it now, already, before they even develop it? I went to the sea level rise meeting, and I've read in the Chronicle how about 33,000 people are going to be displaced in the Bay Area because of sea level rise. And I don't think there's been any studies about how the sea level rise is going to affect the quarry area, the ocean area. And the traffic is already bad in Pacifica. And oh my God, what's the traffic? I mean, is it going to take me like an hour to get out of Valimar now because of this development in the quarry? I really, really am very, very sad and upset. The whole thing sounds awful. And I really hope the Planning Commission and the City Council really, really think about this before they ruin this beautiful area that people already enjoy. And there's also, like, when I used to walk in the quarry and up on the hill, I see coyotes. I see rabbits when I'm going. I mean, like, how the wild animals going to survive with 20 million people trampling all over that area? So I think there is a lot to think about, and this is just a terrible idea.
Dan Stegnick, followed by Ian Lewis.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thanks for hearing me again. It's always a pleasure to tell a dais full of lawyers and Bob what's in a contract. But take a look at Peter Loeb's question. What are you guys doing here? You know, what happens if this initiative passes? You know, Elizabeth said the initiative's pretty set. It's been filed. And it specifically excludes the city from mitigating anything after it's been filed. New city council, new planning commission, doesn't matter. Read the contract. Once the initiative's filed, those maximums on housing and stuff are set. A couple things on there. You know, I'm not sure whether the project manager is aware that we've got 5 different bids, actually 6 different bids that came back last month to build between 70 and 180 hotel rooms less than 1.7 miles from there at 2212 Beach Boulevard, which also shows as being underwater at the sea level rise thing. In fact, the Bob Battaglio, the littoral cell expert for the state, says you can build a library there, but you'll have to put it on stilts so the waves can go under it. There's been nothing preventing us from building a hotel there for the last 20 years. They could build one tomorrow, or maybe they won't. The contract, the initiative specifically sets that the city will lose all control over any, this will be the final vote on having areas of the quarry be commercial. Like Tom Clifford said, those protected areas, the reclaimed wetlands, you know, people won't be allowed there. If you look at all the other wetlands purchased by the Army Corps of Engineers, dogs and cats won't be allowed there too. But if the Army Corps of Engineers doesn't want to purchase those wetlands, then suddenly they have the option of that being commercial too. I think the huge carrot here for the city is the TOT tax, the transient occupancy tax. We get 12% of every dollar spent, and we've got about a 72.7% occupancy ratio. Right now, we've got 275 hotel rooms in the city. Any night, 199 of them on average are rented. If we're adding 150 to 200 hotel rooms at Beach Boulevard and 200 hotel rooms here, we're essentially tripling capacity in a very short period of time. And, you know, 3 of our bids for the 2212 Beach Boulevard project were Marriott's. And if this developer has a Marriott plan too, obviously the Marriott's got a set of formulas that affect their occupancy and where they're willing to build hotels. Just something that they might want to take a look at. Finally, just talking about the low-income housing, affordable housing. We lost 93 units of very low income housing last year, and in the Harmony project in specific, there was a in lieu fee paid of $342,000 after the fact to avoid building those low-income parcels. Thank you.
All right, Ian Lewis, followed by Stephanie Bet Johnson. I know I got that one wrong. Hopefully.
Thank you, Commissioners. Ian Lewis, I'm Research Director with Unite Here Local 2, the Hotel and Restaurant Workers Union. Ours is a union of housekeepers, bellmen, dishwashers, laundry workers, sort of workers who would work in a facility like this. You know, hotels are not just a source of revenue, and they're not pretty buildings necessarily. They're places where people work. Hotels are like the factories of the service sector, and the character of the jobs can vary hugely depending on the commitments that a developer makes. They can be the kind of jobs that lift up a community, or they can be the kind of jobs that drag a community down. There are about 200 residents of Pacifica who work in the hotel industry, a few of them here, many of them in San Francisco. You know, this is squarely in the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission because the kinds of jobs that the developer commits to or fails to commit to impact the mechanics of this project from a land use perspective, from an environmental perspective, the sort of things that you are charged with looking at. You know, in terms of traffic, the distance that people have to travel if they're able to afford to live in Pacifica, or if they have to travel huge distances. Increasingly, we see workers coming from as far away as the Central Valley to work here in the peninsula. So I urge you, as you weigh all the many issues that you have to in looking at this project, if it does go forward, to weigh the character of those jobs and the impacts that those have on the type of use of this land. I also I want to thank a previous commenter and really draw your attention to something that she said. That if those housing units do in fact permit short-term rentals like Airbnbs, that radically changes the land use here. And that is something that if that is permissible, that you have to factor into your analysis here, that you will not just have the 188 or the 200 hotel rooms, including the bungalows, or 200 plus hotel rooms, including the bungalows. You'll have hundreds more in those housing units. So please keep a close eye on that. Thank you.
Okay, Stephanie, thank you. Followed by Jim Heldberg.
Stephanie Betjeman from Valamar. My husband and I just moved to the area and spent quite a bit of time walking through the quarry to the coast. I like the idea of a pub and a cafe. Those are things that were thrown out that piqued my interest. I think it was Susan? Elizabeth, sorry, from I guess the design committee that mentioned something about being from the East Coast of New England. I had the chance to travel there, and I know that most coastal area there is mediated by private owners and controlled by private owners. We appreciate the sensitive approach and the tasteful rendition offered by our prospective developer. And while public relations efforts have taken on a strong preservationist bent, we realize that construction of a complex of this size and scope is sure to have an impact on the delicate coastal environment, conservation of precious coastal space, and quality of life considerations for Pacificans on a basic level. What we hear, what we see, and how we fulfill the day-to-day tasks of making our way around our community. For the majority of those in our community and the Bay Area at large, restoration, reclamation, and conservation without commercialization represent the most appropriate use of this land. And short of this ideal, Pacificans, led by Mayor DeGray, the City Council, and this Planning Commission, are tasked with balancing revenue gains with sustainable growth, coastal conservation, and reasonable traffic conditions for all who travel on historic Highway 1. Responsible, sustainable commercial development on a much smaller scale is worth entertaining. A private project of this scale, encompassing hundreds of residences, guests, their vehicles, and their associated burden on bottlenecked Highway 1 are misplaced in this particular town at this location. I urge all involved to maintain the original zoning specifications under which this parcel was purchased, working with our developers to ensure a minimal footprint on this coastal swath of land, one which ensures visual and physical preservation of natural surroundings for generations to come. These expansive and ambitious plans represent a beautiful shoe which simply does not fit. Let us arrive at a unifying resolution to this potentially divisive issue and serve as wise stewards of our land. Thank you.
All right, Jim Heldberg, followed by Dinah Verby.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm fortunate enough to have led Segway tours through the quarry for 10 years. I have taken about somewhere around 10,000 people through the quarry, and I love the quarry. I'm also solidly behind developing the quarry to use it even better. We've had two proposals come to the Pacifica to develop that quarry, and they were shot down, and probably properly so, because they were not properly thought through. We have a strong environmental movement in this town. I sit on both sides of this issue. It seems to me that we should not be fighting about retaining the quarry in some environmental way versus developing it. I think we can develop it environmentally responsibly, and I believe we can take environmental issues and blend them right into the quarry. I'm specifically talking about putting in an environmental studies center in the quarry. Perhaps this might be a college or university extension center of a few classrooms or a library or a study area, or in some way to study the unique environment. Where else in the world can you study great white sharks and mountain lions within a half a mile? I don't know of any place like that. We could study the quarry for geology purposes. We can study the animals. We can certainly study the rising sea levels. There's a world of things we can do, and the world could come to Pacifica to study the environment. And I'm just proposing that suggestion. I've already submitted that suggestion, but I'd like to see it studied more. Pacificans have great ideas. Pacificans do not like to have ideas shoved down their throat. None of us do. And so I'm encouraging that we bring as many ideas into this project as we can. It won't work otherwise. Thank you.
All right, Dinah Verby, followed by Chuck Gust.
Hello, Dinah Verby. I'm going to start with what I think are the pluses with the whole concept. I relish the possibility that the wetlands could be restored and enhanced, and that habitat could be preserved, and that soil stabilization could occur, and the hiking trails could be improved, and in general, and invasive species removed. I would love to see the pampas grass gone. That said, I also have a number of concerns about what's now being proposed, and I want to echo the concerns of other speakers that we don't quite understand why this is the very first public session, which should be the first of many, trying to shape this proposal. Why is there now a ballot initiative that's going to pretty much define the parameters of this and what, if we all want to make changes and do things like put in ball fields, it doesn't seem that like that's going to be possible. So I would encourage the developer to rethink the strategy of going to the ballot now and wait for these public processes to unfold, because I think, that would make for a better project all the way around. Anyway, I have a number of very specific things about what has been proposed. One is the initiative itself, I think, is ambiguous as to whether the commercial components of the development would actually be required to be built. This is, after all, a commercial site. The reason we want to develop it is to generate revenue. Therefore, it seems to me commercial should be absolutely required, but the way it's written, it says, well, it would be allowed. And as another speaker said, if it's not phased in appropriately, they could just build the housing and then say, see ya, we don't want to build the hotel and other stuff now. That would completely defeat the whole purpose of developing the quarry from an economic revenue standpoint. Others have spoken about the traffic nightmares. It's unclear to me whether there would be a public transit hub. I don't understand where all the parking's going to go for each of the components. The public trails appear to run exactly right next to the quarry road, which to me doesn't make for a very pleasant hiking experience. It's unclear how the public access areas will be maintained and paid for. Whether there's going to be a public vote in the future is ambiguous. The initiative has conflicting language about that. And also, what if after the permit is granted, the developer comes in and asks for waivers and modifications? There's apparently going to be a public vote allowed up to a new public vote allowed up to the point of the permit, but what about after that? I guess I'm out of time. Thanks.
All right, Chuck Gust, followed by Mike, and I don't see a last name.
Good evening, Chuck Gust, 100 Rockaway Beach. First, I want to thank you all for your time and your service to the community, and the time you do put in to look at projects like this. I think I had everything pretty well set until Peter Loeb spoke and got me confused. So one thing that does not come up, and I never hear, is for a bond measure for the Coastal Conservancy and for GGNRA to get involved and just buy the property. I mean, we've gone through this so many times that it does get a little ridiculous, but if the community doesn't want it, I think Julie Lancel should spearhead that venture, and I think that, and it's probably a strong possibility. Rockaway Beach, and thank you for your presentation, is squeezed right now for parking. It is squeezed for traffic. It can't even handle the farmer's market anymore. We complained about buses, we complained about delivery trucks, we complained about a number of things when the redevelopment agency pushed forward to do what they did. And now we're to the point with beachgoers, bicyclists, people coming to Rockaway Beach, people coming just to Pacifica alone, are passing right through the businesses because there's no infrastructure to accommodate the people that are coming. What I do want to say is that for any project, I think the quarry deserves a project, but for any project, you have to think about just staffing, just the staffing alone. I think a perfect example is the Ritz Hotel, who, after it was built in Half Moon Bay, wound up having to buy a piece of property across Highway 1 and bus their staff to the Ritz Hotel to accommodate parking. So it was way underplanned, and for one reason or another, somebody missed it. My main point is parking. It's got to be staffing, it's got to be visitors, it's got to be for volleyball players, it's got to be for bicyclists. Whatever this project is going to attract, the infrastructure has got to be built for it. Thank you.
All right. We have Mike, and followed by Kirsten Andrews Schwinn.
Hi, my name is Mike Andrews Schwinn. My wife is up next. Yeah, I just want to lead with my personal feelings about developing the quarry. I love the quarry just the way it is. Doesn't need to change for me, and would like to see it preserved. I resonate with all the concerns that the previous speakers have raised, and I want to raise one new one. No one's really talked specifically about trash containment. We're talking about a development that may bring, 500 residents to a very small area, plus a hotel, and how much trash is this activity going to produce, and how is it going to be contained? And there's a 100-foot offset from the creek. It sounds nice, but 100 feet's probably from where you're sitting to maybe the end of the hall there. A plastic bag blows out my window. It's going to land in a creek that I'm assuming Pacifica has spent a significant amount of, made a significant investment in restoring. It'd be a shame if that creek was degraded in any way by the proximity of so much human activity. And that's all I have to say. What thought is being given to trash containment? Thanks.
All right. Kirsten Andrews Schwinn, followed by Claire Irvin Lee, which is my last card.
Oops, you thought it was your last card.
I came to this meeting with an open mind. I really wanted to hear more about the proposal. I know that we need more housing in this county. I know that the city needs more taxes. But I was struck by some of the really unrealistic elements of this proposal. For example, the traffic patterns proposed are not based in reality. And I think it's not surprising that the traffic study hasn't been done yet. I wonder, is there an environmental impact assessment? Are there endangered red-legged frogs living in that creek, and how would they be impacted by, for example, Commissioner Cooper's proposal of lighting? How would the wildlife corridor be impacted by these proposals? I think the question of sea level rise, has that been studied for this site? It's not clear to me. Has that been taken into account? How long does the site have? Is that in the plans? I think the bungalows are a terrible idea. I don't necessarily think all of it's a terrible idea. I think the bungalows are a terrible idea. But I really agree with the general sentiment that we need to update the general plan here in Pacifica and look carefully at where it's safe to develop, from an environmental point of view, from a sea level rise point of view, where it makes sense for bringing in income for the city, where it makes sense to put housing, and look at it holistically across the city. But meanwhile, this proposal elements of it seem really unrealistic at this point.
Claire Irvin Lee, followed by Julie Lancel, which is my last card of the evening that I've got.
First of all, I vote for Julie Lancel to spearhead this. I think she'd be great. I have very little to say except, where is the transit? Nobody has mentioned a word about bringing in Samtrans or a BART shuttle or anything at all about how we're going to get in and out of this place. We live at Pedro Point. The only time I ever go into the quarry, I walk there from Pedro Point. I wouldn't even. How do you get in and out? There's no way. They've talked about parking. You got to drive there first. Weekends, maybe. Weekdays, forget it. And I don't use the farmer's market. You couldn't dream of driving in and parking there and getting out. Why would you even bother? It's a lovely place. It's zoned commercial. It should be commercial. Put a hotel there. Put a parking lot for the hotel. Put some retail. But for heaven's sake, don't build housing there. It'll so compound the problem. And even if you're thinking about it, think transit first. There's no way we can increase the number of people living here without thinking about transit.
And Julie Lancel.
Well, I'm not sure the expectations of my abilities are totally warranted, but I do appreciate it nonetheless. Yeah, I was not planning to come tonight because it is my birthday. See, I have my notes written on one of my birthday cards. Anyway, I think, I don't know how many of you, I've lived here for 30 years, so I've been through a number of proposals that were presented for the quarry, and I'm sure in the last 10 years a lot of folks have been through a couple of them. And the bottom line is with the quarry is it is, and I beg to be disputed on this if that's the case, but it is endangered species habitat. It has been for quite some time. And so it does deserve to be, I know it's been roughed up a little bit in the last few years with the grading and everything like that, but that's what it was, and that creek is home to red-legged frogs, and it's a great place for walking and being, and I think we all know that. The price of that property has gone down over the years. I mean, it's really quite a bit less now than it was. It would be great to move forward on working with the Park Service and the Coastal Conservancy and looking at, seeing how we can maybe raise the funds to acquire the property. On the other hand, there is a need from Rockaway Beach to expand that area somewhat. I think we all realize that it hasn't really reached its commercial critical mass to really be a place where you can walk around and spend some time in, other than, of course, going to lunch at Nick's or the Moonraker or the restaurants there. There's a few shops. But it would be nice to be able to bump it out, maybe to the Quarry Road, the old Quarry Road, and put in live work, maybe having some residential that's live work. But I don't think the property really can accommodate anything greater than that. And I think it would serve the community a great deal to have that commercial bumped out a little bit to the Quarry Road. And that also would provide an easy access from Highway 1, because it's kind of spaced between Reina Del Mar and the main street going into Rockaway Beach. So I guess I just would like us to really, it's just so, people get ambitious and when they look at the quarry, but it really is a spectacular property. And honestly, the western part of it, people think is part of the Maury Point. And I think that would be a tremendous loss to the community. So I would hope that going forward we begin to do some collaboration and the property owner consider that and compromise. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends the public hearing on this, and I'll bring it back to the project proponent. If she'd like to come up and respond to any of the questions she heard or comments.
Do you want me to ask you a question?
If you had any response to
do I have
things.
response? I'm sorry, I didn't realize that I had that opportunity. Well, I really appreciate, first of all, the opportunity to have this kind of conceptual level study and kind of opportunity to present at this level, because we are not submitting an application at this point and we're not into detailed level. And I really appreciate the concerns of everyone who came out tonight and got up to speak. And it's clear that the quarry is a beloved area, and we definitely respect that. I do, I was thinking of comparisons with the previous proposal, Peebles, and then the Rockaway specific plan proposal and the general plan update, which was not updated. So Peoples had a much larger development program, was about 355 units, I believe, and spread out over the site, mostly single family. And then the Rockaway specific plan is proposing 2.1 million square feet of development for the site. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. Business commercial and visitor commercial, 1.2 square feet of business commercial on the site. And then the general plan update is proposed 435,000 square feet of visitor commercial. So in terms of scale of project, I do think it's good to kind of keep in mind that we have scaled down the extent of the project quite a bit. I thought there's some really terrific ideas and suggestions for things to study. Transit is something that we are thinking about, and the area near where we're showing guest parking is an area where we're thinking of looking into a multimodal center, but we're just in the beginning stages of those kinds of discussions, so I didn't want to push it too hard because we don't know if it's going to pan out or not. But it is something that we're very interested in, and that's why we got Nelson Nygaard in particular on board with the team, because they're kind of transit fanatics. They're really the leaders in innovative transportation solutions in the country. So we're really excited about working with them. I thought there were some great suggestions about parking solutions, and I did want to clarify that there is parking within the structure of the hotel and within the structure of the apartments, so we're not expecting that to sort of invisibly be parked. We are parking at the city's required rate for the underlying, the most comparable zoning, which is multifamily, or the C2 coastal zoning. But I think that parking for people who just want to come and use the site is also very, very important and needs to be considered. The issue of big box stores or Costco is certainly not something that's ever crossed our mind, and it could be that we could look at maximum footprint or something of stores so that there could be a level of assurance about that. Sorry, I'm kind of scattered. Usually I don't get a chance to respond, so. Did you have any thoughts, Ashley, that came to mind that we should respond to at this point? Sea level rise. Great point. We have looked at sea level rise. We'll continue to look at sea level rise. One thing that wetlands do is they, especially in a situation like this, is they serve as kind of a safety valve for sea level rise, because the water can come in and instead of flooding, it comes in and it fills the wetland. So that's one reason that wetlands are so very important for coastal environments, is that they do act as kind of a sponge or safety valve for sea level rise. But we will articulate that better, and I appreciate that comment, because it's obviously an issue that all of us in any coastal environment need to consider. Looking at what I circled, management of open space, extremely important. The disposition of open space, you can design it and build it, but if it's not maintained, then it can deteriorate. Someone asked if there is an environmental review process, and absolutely, there will be a full and complete environmental review process with the city as lead agency on this process. So we'll go through all the steps of CEQA. The city, assuming that there's an EIR, which is fairly likely, project level EIR, we would expect to have that running once the project description is submitted. Did you want to speak to that at all, or is that okay? So I guess those were some of my comments that come to mind. We are, the issue of lighting along trails is a great question, and safety, and the whole idea here is to kind of make the trails and access safe. There are some extremely steep places where people scramble up that south face, and we're not proposing any access there. It's really not safe. It's like something that 8-year-old wants to scramble up, but it's eroding, and it would not be part of our trail system. We're working currently, the landowner is working currently right now with the Coastal Commission getting some signage up so that some of the unsafe trails are marked off. And that's very important. And without any kind of investment and giving some love to this property, none of that's gonna happen. I probably have about 100 other comments, but I won't take your time to read my notes back through.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, I'm just going to bring it back to the commission for final thoughts on this. So we'll start off with Commissioner Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. I really appreciate everybody's comments. I thought they were very thoughtful, and I thought there was a lot of great ideas. I do have a question for the developer after some comments here. I think there's a balance between development, and obviously there's a balance between making this an economical, viable project. You do have to, the developer's not here simply to please Pacifica as much as he's here to please Pacifica and make some sort of return on his investment. I mean, that's why a developer comes to Pacifica in general anyways. But there is a balance. There's a balance between what development we have. One thing that I really took to heart was why do we have this ballot measure so early? Is if you were for People's Development or if you were not for People's Development, he did perform quite a bit of outreach telling you about the project. There was numerous committee meetings and numerous where he went out into the public in different areas of Valimar and Lindemar, and he actually spoke about what he was going to do. Now, whether you liked it or not is immaterial, but he did tell you what he wanted to do, and this is what the proposal, either get behind it or don't get behind it. And I feel that's missing here, and from the comments that I'm getting from the public, it doesn't seem like we've had any of that, and I guess that's a little disappointing. So I guess I'd like to ask the developer a little bit of why so early? Why are we doing this ballot measure now versus waiting for more public comment and doing outreach? Is that something you guys can respond to? Yeah, I was just curious, why the ballot measure now? I thought it was a valid question. Why are we have a ballot measure now rather than doing this outreach first before we do the ballot measure?
There has been some outreach ongoing on this project, and I think there's been a pretty clear history of previous projects. This is a scaled down, essentially, version of several other projects. So I think that the owner, and maybe I'm talking, I'm putting words in their mouths at this point, but they wanted to get the process going. There's a long lead time for an initiative like this. You have to file it, and then you got to get the signatures, and it doesn't come into the ballot until November. And in the meantime, we can be getting a lot of great input from the community, such as tonight, and we can be filling in those studies and those evaluations, and doing more outreach as we go through. So we don't see it sort of, you have to get your initiative and then you do your outreach. It's kind of a congruent process that then also ties in with the discussions with the city and understanding the road systems and doing the traffic study. So I guess I would say that he didn't want to wait for the initiative and then kind of get started, but rather to have a more congruent process.
From the feedback that I've heard tonight, are you considering revising your initiative to incorporate some of these comments?
I think that the initiative is, so the initiative is distinct from the previous initiative because it's actually very definite, and it has definite parameters and direction to City Council. It kind of has these development standards that go with it. So it's actually more specific and more restrictive to the landowner than the People's Initiative was. And that was part of the strategy, was to try to really craft something that had a very clear cap and more definition of what the ultimate product was. The People's Initiative had a lot of lot of flexibility. There's a huge range, 200 to 400 room hotel, maybe, so it actually was a pretty loosey-goosey development proposal compared to this one. Our caps are lower, and our development standards are more strict than the People's Initiative was. So,
but absent People's Initiative, from the comments that we heard today, would you consider revising your initiative to incorporate some of these comments?
Can you give me an example?
Well, I think that there was restriction on the amount of open space that there was. You've included some plans there. There's some things that said we can reasonably build on this for let's say commercial property, rather than you having to build the commercial property. There's nothing necessarily about those restrictions that say you have to do certain elements.
Well, right now the initiative says that we have a minimum of 75% of the site is open space, which is a lot. So it could be more, right? It could have more open space, but you can't have less open space. So are you saying that we would want to have a proposal where we had more commercial development?
Well, I think there were some comments on whether or not you needed to actually build some of the hotel or the commercial development, or there were some phasing restrictions, something that would give the city and give the people kind of an idea that, hey, you know what, if I'm going to build my single family homes, I'm also required to build commercial. I'm also
There's no
required.
single family homes proposed.
Well, let's say the mixed use.
There's no reason that the city, so we have to go still through an entire EIR process with a full mitigation plan. There's no reason that the city can't deploy other requirements on the project besides the initiative. Right, so if there's phasing, for example, phasing is something that's required to be submitted as part of the rezoning application for a PD. There can be a phasing plan that adds requirements as part of a rezone. So you can add requirements onto the initiative, and it's good for the city, right? It's good for the people because that's the reason that the city wanted us to go through the environmental and review process with the city. We still have to go through that process, but we can't back down. We can't build more stuff. We can't fill in more open space. So there's quite a bit of restriction built into the initiative. So it's a very strong and specific proposal, actually, compared to previous ones. Is that?
It kind of answers my question. I mean, there's a lot of smart people in Pacifica. There's a couple attorneys up here, and I haven't gotten into the initiative and to actually dissected that initiative to really have any comment, but prior to you filing it. But if it's already filed and that's what we're going to get, then I have to dissect it and really see if I agree with that proposal or not. It just doesn't give the opportunity for review prior to filing it, and I guess that's kind of the rub for myself, is that there's not a lot of opportunity to review that prior to it being posted.
Yeah, basically it's setting caps. It's setting caps, maximum development for the different types of development, building heights, minimums of open space, so it's fairly restricted. Where exactly Quarry Road goes, for example, how much parking, that hasn't been set yet.
Oh, I understand.
Right, so that's a city review process, and we look forward to that.
Thank you.
Mr. Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank everyone for their thoughts, and as everyone knows, Pacifica has a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings, and that's why I live here. So with this being just an idea right now, I'm just going to give some real rough thoughts on this. There were several items that came up that I jotted down that I thought brought a lot of sense, as very important, and great ideas. I really did like, and it's not the first time we've heard it, an environmental study center idea. Even have tour classes, schooling some sort. We're better. I mean, people have come here for studying sea level rise. People have come here for studying, you name it. Why not have it here? I mean, it's a great idea, so thank you. It's a wonderful idea. The traffic is going to be a problem. There's no two ways around that. We are experiencing discussions, about what to do with the traffic in that exact area now, and it's divided the town right down the middle again. So that is a serious problem that needs a lot of thought in my mind. The sea level rise, again, go back, that is an issue. We've seen that this year especially. I live in the north part of town. I've watched 2 apartment houses be torn down, and no telling what's going to happen to the third. There's 3 houses down south of that have been vacated because of sea level rise and cliff erosion. We can't stop cliff erosion. I'll agree with somebody that said that earlier. California's losing, I think the thought was 1 foot a year. Well, there's an area there that lost a lot more than that this year. So we have to really, really look at that, but I also don't think a developer is going to want to put good money into an area that's going to flood within the first, hopefully, 100 years. But that's, again, just a thought of mine. So I do like, with the traffic idea, I do like the idea of the quarry road. I really do, because in my belief, there's that Highway 1's the only, in that section is it. Something happens on that, we're stuck. But that brings to the next point, is that will be used for traffic, so there's no 2 ways. That road looks wonderful on that map, and the wider you build it, the more it's going to be used. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it will be used for traffic alternatives for Highway 1. The bungalows, I'm torn on the bungalow thing. I don't know I know there's only 12, but 2,500 square foot, that's pretty good size. It's bigger than my house. And I don't know as if that adds that much to that development, especially on the side of I know you probably won't be able to see it because it's over the edge, but it's just a thought. The measure wording concerns me also. There's several points of ifs and ands or maybes, and I know you can't change the measure now because it's already in there. But if it comes to something, we need to really, as staff and commission and everything, we need to really lock down some of those ifs and ands and maybes in that. And I know we can. We've done it before with different things. And the last thing I'm going to bring up is, and this is only my belief, but there's been so much talk through the years. I've been here over 25 years, and there's been so much talk through the years of the open space and what we love about this town, and it is. But there's also got to be talk, and that's one of the reasons I'm on this commission, of property owners have a right to do something with their property. And we can't say, no, you can't build on it at all. We've got to come up with some kind of alternative. So, either the city comes together and gets our savior out here to get a whole bunch of money to buy that property. I'm sorry, Julie. We either buy the property and turn it into permanent open space, or we come to some kind of agreement with the town to build a very responsible development that everybody can. You're not going to like. Nobody's going to like everything, but if you can get the majority of people to like parts of it, and other parts maybe not so much, somewhere along the line there's got to be something. And either that or just buy the land, give it to the parks, and not have to worry about this issue ever coming up again. I mean, that's the bottom line. So I've said my spiel now. I think I'm going to pass it on. Thank you.
Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Evans, for those comments. I think you were able to capture a lot of what I was going to say, actually. So, there was a lot of good comments from the public. There was a certain theme, which was, I love the quarry the way it is. Let's keep it that way. I mean, I've taken hundreds of bicycle rides in the quarry since I've lived here. I know the quarry backwards and forwards. I love that area. If we can get the money together to buy it, I'm sorry, it's for the, if we can somehow put it into a land trust, someone's got like a couple $1 million to do that, that's great, and then the situation's solved. But as Commissioner Evans said, if we can't do that, then we have to look at working with a developer in coming up with a plan that's workable for us. And, I went through the whole Peebles experience, and before that, what was it, Trammell Crow? And if you've noticed, each time the developer that's come back has scaled down the scope of the project. And do you guys remember People's project? It was 300 and something, 50 units of residential housing, and it was spread over that whole area. And so Plan A is to get is to buy the whole land. That's great, but barring that, there is a lot that I really like about this conceptual site plan, and I know that's all that we're being really asked to do here is give our views on this high level design. I love the fact that that whole flat area would be restored wetlands. That's really exciting. It breaks my heart to see the pampas grass there. It just breaks my heart. And not only there, but it's spreading everywhere. That's what pampas grass does. And so the idea of getting a steward there and actually investing money and time and restoring that land is very, very exciting for me because I'm a nature lover. The quarry itself, it's so blighted, it's so ugly. And again, the same idea, to get somebody who's willing to put money in and invest in and restore the quarry site itself, that would be wonderful. The infrastructure problems are daunting, very daunting. I don't know if I encourage people who are involved in the design to travel that corridor at between 8 and 8:30 in the morning. It's just a nightmare. On a sunny day on the weekend, I think one of the speakers said, well, on the weekend maybe it's not that bad. Well, we all know that on a nice sunny day on the weekend, Highway 1 is a parking lot. So that area is maxed out at various times of the day and various days of the week. It's terrible. So there's daunting infrastructure issues, and I know you haven't had your traffic planners look at it, but that's going to be something. It's going to be a real task. And anyway, so. But there's, again, I really do, I also think it makes a lot of sense to put the housing density in the area that you put in that San Marlo Way area. I think that makes lots and lots of sense. But again, where are all those commuters going to go? How are they going to make it into the traffic jams of the morning commute? That's tough. I think that Commissioner Evans is right that the Quarry Road is going to be used by people who are already stuck in Highway 1 traffic. It's just the nature of us. We're always looking for a quicker way. So I can totally see that road being backed up every morning, just like Highway 1 is, with people who are not just who don't just live there, in other words. I love the idea of the beachfront plaza. That's really exciting. I think that's very, very, I'd love to bring, like people have said, a critical mass to that area and have it take off. It really hasn't taken off yet, but some thoughtful retail there could be really great. bungalows, that area up there is very special. It's also bladed up there. Although I think the area that you're talking about putting the bungalows isn't so bladed, but I wonder, it does really extend the footprint of the plan, and I think if I could do away with any part of it, it would be that part of it, because it really does extend into an area that otherwise isn't really used. But anyway, that's already on the initiative, so it's not really relevant. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Compared to the Peebles project, this is phenomenal. It really is. And so I kind of I understand why the developer's like, well, I'm scaling this down. Peebles 355, this is like 200. He's almost halved the Peebles project in terms of the residential. So I can understand his thinking of like, okay, this is way, way lower, so let's just get it on the ballot and see if it can pass, and then we can move from there. I understand that thinking. I don't think it's so crazy as some of the speakers have said. Anyway, traffic, that's a big issue. And so anyway, those are my thoughts.
All right, I want to thank my fellow commissioners for their comments. A lot of my comments are encapsulated by, or caught by theirs. I do appreciate Commissioner Evans' discussion about how this is private property, and I agree with Commissioner Gordon that there's a lot of the conceptual plan to like. I do think that the commercial and hotel and open space components of this plan are something that hold a lot of promise. I think that the residential aspect, the multifamily aspect of this plan just has a problem with traffic. You can easily see, just doing some simple math, you can see 4 or 5, even 600 car trips out of this project northbound in the morning. And if that traffic is going to be funneled through the Reno Del Mar Highway 1 intersection, I think you're going to encounter a very vigorous and sustained and vocal opposition to this project, because that will not work for the neighborhoods south of there. You're going to encounter a lot of opposition from Lindemar, Pedro Point, Valamar, and Rockaway. So if there is a way to funnel that traffic completely outside of that intersection, I don't know how. Maybe that's a solution, maybe a combination of other things, finding another way out of Valamar combined with some real innovative traffic measures might be another. But to me, that is going to be a significant hurdle. It would counsel towards scaling back the residential component of this project. All right, well, that's all I've got. Again, I just want to reiterate also I like Commissioner Cooper's idea of if you're going to have that many families and that many potential kids, you could see hundreds of kids actually in a multi-unit, multi-family residential component like this. You will need some sort of a recreational field. Okay, unless anyone has anything else to say, I'm going to close the study session. And we're going to move on to Commission communications. Oh.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and thank you for coming. Thank you for the presentation. Okay, Commission communications. And I also want to say thank you to all the citizens who showed up tonight. Long meeting. Really appreciate your public input tonight. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to thank Tom Clifford and Dan Stegnick for their comments at the start of the meeting. on matters not related to the study session, it's when citizens involved citizens have great thoughts, great ideas. It's great to hear them. Dan's comments about the sewage capacity, Tom's comments, they're great. So anyway, I want to thank you guys for coming up and saying your stuff and encouraging folks to do that, because we all benefit.
Okay, I don't see any other lights. Staff communications.
I just wanted to let you know that the council will consider planning commission appointments next Monday on the 11th.
Thank you. And on to adjournment. Commissioner Cooper.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Commissioner Evans.
I second that.
We had a motion, a second. Please vote. And that, I am sure, passes unanimously. Thank you. Good night.